Acid attacks are on the rise in the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Theresa May has been forced to review laws which seem to let those guilty of carrying out such appalling attacks escape almost unpunished from these crimes. The number of assaults which have been reported involving acid and other corrosive substances across the UK has nearly trebled in just 4 years.
The latest wave of acid attacks hit London on a single day in July, when 5 men were assaulted during a 70-minute period. Many of the attacks so far have been connected to Islamophobia, reflecting a steep rise in hate crime attacks against Muslim communities. UK Home Secretary Amber Rudd announced a review by the government on tougher punishments, adding that those found guilty should feel the full force of the law. But acid attack victim Adele Bellis, who was badly injured after being attacked with sulfuric acid in 2014, is one of many victims who has been critical of the light punishment for those who commit these crimes. The man who attacked her was released from prison after serving just half of his jail sentence of 4 years and 4 months. He definitely hasn't served long enough. The justice system is rubbish, she said, adding that she did not feel she had justice.
What should be the sentence for those who commit these crimes? And what can the government do to prevent these attacks? Simple questions with important answers. And let's start with this. Does the public know that attacks involving corrosive substances across the UK have nearly trebled in just 4 years? We asked them. Here's what they said.
No, I didn't know that really. I just heard of one on the news here a week or so ago, but I've only been here about a month, so I really didn't realize they were that bad.
I mean, there's been a lot of coverage in the media about it, so I think at the moment it's probably quite a lot of hype around it, and so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, but I mean, obviously it's not good.
It's a bit worrying, yes, because you don't know who you might offend and you don't know how you affect people, so maybe a bit of mindfulness wouldn't go amiss nowadays, to be honest.
I didn't know that it was that statistic, but it makes sense, yeah.
No, I did not know that, and that's disconcerting.
I had seen more news coverage of it. It sounds pretty abhorrent, horrible way to attack someone.
Well, I don't know if they've nearly trebled. I know that they've increased significantly. I mean, it's all over the news, so it's really horrible. I'm aware of that, and I don't know what has caused it, what's the whole the mindset behind this, but it's a very cruel thing, and something has to be done.
I did hear that. Yeah, I think it's terrible.
Well, I did know that, and I'm appalled. The trebling, it has different aspects. But one significant part is 1/3 of the London attacks are actually centred in one borough, the borough of Newham. And that tells you that the nature of those attacks, they are essentially a gang attacks. There is another aspect to this. Well, the gang attacks are about a power within the group, and then gangs against other groups. And then you've got individual attacks and robberies. But the other aspect are what are the so-called honour killings, which are not honour killings, in which basically the male world is violently asserting its views over women. So the whole thing is on the increase. It's very sharp, and something needs to be done.
Sadly and worryingly, in the most recent years, from what I have seen and observed and heard from other people, there's been a massive increase of the acid attacks in the UK. From what I understand, from 2011 until nowadays, there's been at least 1,500 cases recorded that involves acid attacks. We're very concerned, as we know that acid attacks could leave permanent scars on the person, and which is a permanent injury that has a massive effects and impacts on their lives. In particular, I'm also concerned that psychological impacts on the person that would and could ruin their lives.
An acid attack victim who lost an ear and suffered deep burns on her face and body stressed the lack of punishment for those who commit these crimes. What are the public's thoughts?
I don't know what the punishment is. I'm not from here, but there should be a really stiff punishment because there is no call for that at all. That's just crazy.
I doubt the perpetrators are thinking about the punishment when they set out to, with acid on them. So I doubt that has any impact particularly.
I think it deserves a life imprisonment, to be honest, because that is more than grievous bodily harm. It's almost harm that can never be repaired, really, both psychologically and physically. So
I think that the punishment should fit the crime. I think it's pretty cowardly, especially if it's sort of just members of the public, caught in the crossfire. It's bad enough anyway, but yeah.
It doesn't seem just.
In that case, less than 6 months sounds pretty shocking, but I would generally say that we have the courts there for a reason. They set sentences, and I think the sentences, by and large, are probably misunderstood generally by the public, and I think there's generally a reason behind sentences that people are given.
That's horrific, okay? And I don't know, have they caught the perpetrators of this? Then, the people that did this really need to be... the full force of the law needs to come down on them. It's horrible, okay? And if they are not, how can I say this? If they're not punished appropriately, this will serve as a precedent. This will serve as a precedent, and probably many more will rise and think, okay, we can't get away with this kind of crime. So really, they have to make an example of the person who did this.
Terrible. They should be locked up for life, really.
To be honest, I don't really know what the punishments look like, and that's the honest answer. But if they are laughable, then that should be addressed, because it's shocking. It's a shocking thing to be happening in this country.
Firstly, the actual effect of an acid attack can be death. In any case, it's a lifetime of punishment, particularly for a woman. If her face is completely disfigured, she may be blinded, she loses an ear, but disfigurement for life, and it, of course, can be anywhere on the body. And there is a culture of silence around this. When thugs, like the Cray gang in the East End, develop their power, fear goes throughout them and their associates. And it's the nature of these acid attacks, that they are gang attacks, or that they have a family background. In both cases, it's very, very tight. And there is a way forward, which I will be dealing with in a moment, as to how to break the culture of silence, in the gangs and in the families. But this lady is right. Something very substantial needs to be done.
That's what I was saying. It is really difficult to track and detect acid attacks, and it is showing that the people who does it, they have knowledge about crime, and they don't want to be tracked and to be arrested by the police. And they know it's harder for the police to track them because, for example, knife crime, when you use a knife, that leaves fingerprints on the knife, and the police can investigate, and that leads to the person who did it. Whilst acid is difficult to tell who's the person who's done it. So it's difficult to evidence where the acid come from and who's thrown it. That's one of the problems with acid attacks.
Considering the lifelong effects these attacks have on the public, should those who commit these crimes with corrosive substances face a life sentence? We put that to the public.
I don't know. I would think it'd have to be on each individual case, but it would have to be really serious. I don't know if life is, but it'd have to be a very serious, especially if there's a child involved.
It's early days at the moment. I think there'd need to be a lot of investigation and research into it, and to check that this is just not an issue that's a problem at the moment and will die down.
I think it deserves a life sentence.
I think that's a difficult one to answer. I think it depends on how it's come about, I guess, but I don't know too much about sentencing for assault and that type of thing. But yeah, generally leaving someone permanently disfigured should be...
Definitely more than 3 months.
I think that life sentences are rarely appropriate. I think that people can be rehabilitated and should be given opportunity to change their ways. However, there should be severe punishment for activities such as using corrosive substances on people.
People that suggest that is to bring about a deterrent, okay? A strong deterrent. I don't know, that might be controversial, but to be honest, I don't mind. Why not? Because, I mean, if someone is in their car and they're not expecting someone to pour acid on them, that's really horrible. Yeah, I say bring it on, why not? You know, they are deserving of life sentences. You know, that will probably stop other people, to be honest with you, yeah.
Yeah, same as paedophiles. They could get away with murder, these people.
In 1958, in Notting Hill, which is part of London, just over there were race riots. And Lord Chief Justice Goddard said that he would stop the riots. It was the last thing he actually did as the Lord Chief Justice. Immediately, the courts were speeded up. The sentences were exemplary. The charges were, in fact, common law charges, riot and affray. And if you were anywhere near those riots or there's any evidence, they started by putting you in prison, and you can work out whether you might get an appeal later on. It stopped the riots. So for this particular matter, there should be exemplary sentences. But how do you break the culture of silence? I propose a new offence, that of condoning acid attack. And although a woman who is bullied by, in fact, her partner, there will be a defence. If you know about it, you will be subject to punishment if you don't report it.
I think this is a complex question, and I want to provide an answer that hopefully is comprehensive. Basically, I do believe that there is a role for education in there, educating young people about the lasting effects of acid attacks, and at the same time changing the laws and introducing new strict laws that would deter criminals from using acid, and also making it difficult for people to buy acids from the supermarkets. So while it's available at the moment in the supermarkets, we need new licensing systems in place where a person who's buying acid is showing an ID or certain age, you're not allowed to buy acid. So, and the supermarkets given the responsibility to question people about buying the acid.
Let's look at the figures. In 2012, 248 acid attacks were reported to the authorities. By 2016, this figure had risen to 720. Britain's capital city, London, has seen a huge number of these crimes. In 2016, 261 cases were reported in London alone. By 2017, this figure had risen to 431 attacks. Official figures show the number of acid attacks since 2011 to be around 1,500.
A 3-year-old boy was wounded by acid in the West Midlands, and 3 days later, a 47-year-old woman in Birmingham was also taken to hospital for the same reason. How does the public feel about this?
It's just crazy. I don't understand the reasoning. I mean, what would you have a reason to do that? And that's what I said. For a child, I could see the punishment, anything. But I would still think it'd be each individual case. But be a very severe punishment, I think.
I don't know what the background to that is, but I assume that's an isolated incident. I can't see that being part of the bigger picture, really. I would imagine that's a family feud or something like that.
Because they're sick. Whoever attacks a child, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, smacking a child is different from attacking a child. Whoever attacks a child is not much different from a paedophile, in my opinion. It's an attack on a child.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's as bad as it can possibly get.
It's disconcerting. I'm not sure about here in Britain, but you can get more harsher punishments for doing the same thing to an animal in Canada.
I read about the 3-year-old boy. It seems it was a shocking incident. I don't think anyone knows the full story yet. I understand there's restrictions on publication of what's happening to protect the family involved. So I'm not sure we can really draw too many conclusions from that. With regards to the 6-year-old lady, again, shocking how people who aren't involved in the actual incident, well, presumably in the activities that led up to the incident being carried out, end up being the victims of it. It's it's shocking.
For a 3-year-old to be a victim in this day and age says a lot about this society. Okay, it's horrible, and something really needs to be done. Something needs to be done to curb this thing. I suggest that maybe regulating the industry where they sell such things is probably a way forward.
That's terrible. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. World's gone mad.
Maybe you have to punish it in a way that you have do social help for the rest of your life. So the punishment to work as a or do things that will help those people to go into living and to have a good living who are the victims.
The acid is easily available. Hydrochloric acid is used in organic manufacture compounds, inorganic manufacture, food manufacture, leather preparation. Sulfuric acid is used in lots of industrial processes, food preparation, and it used to be in car batteries, etc. And then it's particularly these acids available, spirits of salts, it's hydraulic acid, it's available as a very powerful drain cleaner. Now, the sale will have to be controlled by legislation, only small amounts, and payments by credit card, and no one under the age of 21. So that is the practical method. That and punishment is the only way forward. And otherwise, we're going to have anybody at risk. And if as a child, their life is ruined for the rest of their life.
That's why I think acid attacks are horrible things to happen to anyone. In particular, I do think that the attackers and the people who are committing these crimes, they not only want to hurt the person, they also want to hurt their relatives, their babies, their girlfriends, their wives, their parents, their elderly, their family members. And it's not their fault. They haven't done anything that they deserve to be punished. I've said earlier that such injuries and crimes leaves lasting scars that would have psychological impacts on the person and ruin their life. And also, not they wanting to ruin the person's life, they also wanting to ruin their family's life and other people's lives. And we need to work on stopping this. Because basically it's the worst things to happen to any person.
What should be done by the government to ensure that acid attacks stop? We ask the public.
I don't know. I really don't know. It's going to be hard to stop because you get some crazy individuals, and how do you stop them? How do you know who they are or what's in their head? It's like terrorists or anything. How do you know how to stop them? You can't tell what somebody's going to do. So. I mean, you can educate people, but I don't know if that's the answer either. If they're that crazy, they're going to do it anyway.
Well, there's always things, action that can be taken to reduce violent crime, but it's a very, it's a much part of that's part of a much bigger picture, the acid attacks. So, as part of the whole package of action government's taking, I would guess that's this is something they're starting to look at research on and things and. The latest instance?
I'm not sure. I mean, how much safeguarding are we going to put in place to protect children? It's at the moment. I think it's getting to the point where you're so cautious that you don't want to move with kids, and so the government can only do so much. I think there should be more of a deterrent. I think deterrent measures would serve a lot better. If people know that it's going to happen for life, they'll think twice.
Hope stronger legislation about who can buy what. I know that it's quite easy to get the things, the acid to do these, so yeah, I don't know how they'd go about doing that because there are obviously legitimate uses for some of it, but
I don't know how to respond to that because I'm not 100% sure as to what you guys currently do.
I mean, clearly the availability of these substances being available to people should be looked at. Education, looking at the causes of why people are choosing this as opposed to any other retribution or weapons needs to be looked at, but I can't give you an answer. I'm not sure whether there is an easy answer to this question.
Regulations, I mean, look at gun control in the country, okay? It's all regulated. Of course, you can buy arms, but I think you need a license. I'm not entirely sure, but you can see weapons are not flooded around the country. So it is with acid. People who manufacture this stuff need to be regulated stringently so that nobody can just walk in a shop and buy acid, okay? That's what the government needs to do. So proper regulations and, constant monitoring. That's my suggestion.
Stop selling it, innit? Harsher punishments. Then stop selling it, basically, innit? You just go in the shop and buy it, can't you? Yeah, it's terrible. That's basically it.
Firstly, an announcement that the courts will act very quickly and will impose exemplary punishment, which means up to life in punishment. Secondly, a new offence of condoning acid attack, which means that if you are a member of a gang and you know that acid has been used or intended to be used, you must report it or you are condoning the use. It catches many more people. Similarly, within the families, and I'm aware that some women are in situations where they wouldn't even dare make a secret call to the police. They would have a defence, but condoning acid attacks is the necessary offence combined with the punishment to wipe out these acid attacks. Thirdly, of course, we're into education in the schools and we're into eradicating gang attitudes, male dominance and some of the underlying factors.
The government has a responsibility to protect and to safeguard every individual that lives in the UK. And I believe that the government has a responsibility in working collaboratively with governmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, charities, community organizations, faith groups, and voluntary sector in identifying and studying the scale of this problem, and also introducing new educational programs in schools, in colleges, in universities to make awareness of the impact of this crime and acid attacks and what it does to people. And also another responsibility in working in partnership with the police and making their job facilitated to be able to find these criminals and give them an adequate punishment that would deter others from doing the same thing again. And also there's a role for the House of Parliament where introducing new laws that are tougher and stricter on acid attacks, which are even worse than knife crimes, and to introduce new punishments that are sufficient and adequate and basically stop the criminals from doing it again.
Attacks on adults and children have occurred all over Britain. Police make arrests, but this crime epidemic continues to shock and frighten the British public. Many members of the public have become worried that violent crimes are on the increase and that they could become victims themselves.
Acid attacks are a violent reality on the streets of Britain. The Prime Minister has been forced to take action as this crime epidemic sweeps the country. This is a first world nation which claims to have an advanced law enforcement and legal system. Yet, just walking down the street, there is a real danger of being attacked by savages with consequences which can last a lifetime.